Namaste, everybody. Um, First of all, I think I need to change roles a little bit. I was introduced as a chief guest. I think the chief guests are the children first, and then the parents of the children who have taken this bold step to get their children educated through the child-centric school. It's not about child-centric school per se, but being in a tier 2, tier 3 city like Vellore, I really applaud the parents for having taken this giant leap of faith in a system of education which is as far away from the so-called norm that the children enacted on the stage as the north-south pole is from the south. It's so different. To be part of an alternate education system is okay with the children. The children enjoy it. There are no classrooms, no syllabus, no textbooks. But for the parents to take that step, I think is a great act of faith, and faith in a system which is probably close to half or 3/4 of a century old. Rishi Valley School has been around for several years. So I really think the chief guests of the day are the children and the parents of the children who are present here. Now, talking about alternate, somebody used the word alternate education. So in the medical field, there's something called alternative medicine. Ayurveda, homeopathy, Unani, these are all called alternative medicine forms. Now, there's no such thing as an alternative form of education. It's either this or it is that. Now, it's no use pointing at a cat and saying it's an alternative dog. It's either a cat or it's a dog. So this, to my mind, is the form of education. Just the way the world has become industrialized, as a result, market-driven, revenue-driven, and finally this entire cycle ends in what everybody likes to call business model these days. Schools have also become business models. Just the way Ayurveda originated in India, education also has a very long heritage in India, and I'm sure all of you know about the Gurukul system of education. So what was the Gurukul system of education? The teacher imparted everything he or she knew to a child over a period of infinite years. There was no such thing as class 1, class 4, class 10. So when you go to a school, so let me stop here and ask you, what is our concept of a school? When we look at a school for our children, we're looking at buildings. Is it recognized for CBSE, ICSE? Who built the CBSE? It was a business model. It was easy to do. How many teachers wanted, how many schools wanted the parents to leave their children with the teachers, to live with the teachers, for the teachers to take the risk of disease, injury. Now the child falls down, breaks a bone, who's to answer? So safety systems were built into schools. Result, there was no education. It was all safe business models. And that has become the norm. And to see someone deviating from that in a town like Vellore, I think is extremely encouraging, and I cannot express how happy I am to see so many parents who've decided to put their children through the ideal system of education. Now, when I talk about the ideal system of education, I'm not talking out of a Jiddu Krishnamurti book. I'm not talking out of some philosophy textbook. I'm talking out of my experience with alternate education. When my son was growing up, he could just not adjust to the mainstream schools. I knew he was capable of studying, but he was certainly not capable of studying the way he was being taught. The result was that he would come back home with poor scores. I've never believed in scores. I didn't ever think scores was anything to do with performance. But everybody else seemed to think so. I come from a family of doctors and teachers. So my aunts and uncles, all of them would come down on me like a ton of bricks to say that, look, he's not cleared his exams, he's only got so many marks. And I would say those marks, perhaps the teacher didn't know what he wrote. But anyhow, a time came when my wife and I had to take a call. We decided this was it. So now let's start looking for schools. So various schools were suggested. Rishi Valley was one of them. Finally, we narrowed down on a school in Ooty, which works on the same principles as the Rishi Valley School. In fact, the founder of that school was the first principal of Rishi Valley School. Long story short, he did extremely well in school, but that came at a cost. I remember I think he was in class 6 or 7 as per the metrics of a regular school. So we went to see this principal lady. It was an old school building, an old palace converted to a school, huge doors, and there was this tiny lady standing there at the door. And she clearly looked like she was out of a Harry Potter movie. Very frightening looking lady. When we saw her, I think the last time she had smiled was like a decade earlier. She didn't smile, she was absolutely tight-lipped. And so the usual story is children undergo this interview, they have to answer questions, a sixth standard student would be asked some science questions, what is the capital of Uzbekistan? That's the kind of interview that usually happens in a school. So now this lady says, the boy can wait outside, the parents please sit here. So we had a full day interview. So halfway through, I looked at my wife. I said, has she got it wrong? Is it we who are being admitted to school or the son that's being admitted to school? But anyway, the whole thing went on. The bottom line was, are you willing to stick this system of education out? It is not going to be easy for you. And it wasn't easy. First of all, we didn't know what class he was in. Questions were not to be asked. When does he finish school? No idea. Every 6 months he was given 45 days off. So, or was it every 3 months? Every 3 months, I think. 5 months. He was given 45 days off. And those 45 days were very clearly defined. No books, no studies. So, she asked me towards the end of the interview, our interview, she says, how far are you willing to go with your child's education? We will punish he might get hurt because they climb trees here, they go running around the place. So I said, if you will take care of him, I don't care how many years it takes. If you have to punish him, punish him. If you break his bone, I will fix it for you. But at the end of the day, when you say his studies are over, I want an honorable young man out of school. So it went on for about 4 or 5 years. Every year the fee would be paid and nothing in return for the fee. No report cards, no clue whether he moved one class up, like those kids were saying, if you don't pass the exam, you don't move up the class ladder. No idea. Somewhere along the way, I get a letter from this lady that I have to pay some money for the IGCSE exams. So I knew he was somewhere close to the 10th standard. So the fee was paid. And then she says, I have not paid the fees because I feel this boy is capable of doing better. So is it okay with you if we keep him one more year? So having taken the plunge, I said, keep him for another year. And he was very angry with me for that. So the Cambridge exam, all his friends took the exam that year. He took the exam the year after. Much later, I don't think she sent us the results. Much later, she told us that he's come first in South India. So that was the kind of education he went through. It was more of an education for my wife and me. And I must at this point say that my wife was extremely supportive. Most mothers would get completely worked up when the report card doesn't come home in the evening. There's no feedback from the teachers. There was nothing for 5-6 years. There was absolutely nothing to be heard from the school. At one point, they said he's finished his A levels, time to go home. So this was the experience we had as parents of a child who went to what I would never call alternate education. I would call that the real education. Whatever else you see is alternate. This is the way to learn. There's no question about the fact that today I was watching the show that the babies put up. The effort was in the participation. The effort was not in perfection. Perfection happens over a period of time. They could have hoodwinked us into believing that these kids are capable of more than they actually are capable of. Wag a stick at them, shout at them, scream at them. It doesn't matter. Let them do what comes from within. We are here only for half an hour to see this show. But the children enjoyed it. One child was crying on the stage. Perfectly fine. That's what children are meant for. They need to cry as well. Now, most schools wouldn't allow that. That child would be removed from the stage. Because the management is worried, what would the parents think? So, when we talk about this alternate system of education, which is all this CBSE and ICSE and SSLC and all that, what I call garbage, literally. This is the kind of education where I think the teachers and the management needs wholehearted support from the parents. Because the proof of this pudding is only in the eating. You will see the results of a fully grown-up child with all the dimensions in the right places, but it's going to take time. Your children may not be able to answer the questions out of an 8th standard science textbook, but it doesn't matter. How many of us in a serious profession remember when Mahatma Gandhi was shot? We probably remember the date. I still can get confused between the October, what was it, 31st and... See, ultimately it doesn't matter to us. You need those things to get past every hurdle, but a child that is mature, a child that has the right perspectives, and now this world is full of negatives. There's all these rotten habits on the one side, a whole lot of things that pull children towards the wrong things. With all those available so freely, we are not going to be able to police these children. Let me tell you, as parents, I can tell you that it's virtually impossible to police a child beyond a point. With mobile phones, with televisions, with media that spews out uncensored stuff, the children have to pick up the art of weeding out right from wrong, right from that age upwards. If we think we can discipline children with the few hours that we get with them, we're going to fail. And Newton's third law is not going to teach them that. Gravity is not going to teach them that. Only attitudes, love, care, affection from the people around is going to inculcate that sense of belonging to this world. And ultimately, what is a school all about? It's not about the buildings. It's not about the teachers. It's not about the management. It's about a child who will go out into this world, and when they deal with someone, that someone says, now why is he different? And then they say, no, look, he went to this weird school where they didn't have textbooks. So that is what education is. Education is not about knowing A, B, C, D. So I would really like to applaud the parents first. The children must be enjoying the show because they have a very free time in the school, unlike these worst cases, the CBSE syllabus. It's worse than a town bus. I must applaud the teachers who've taken the efforts. I was looking at the teachers who were so patiently trying to prompt the kids on the stage. It was not about doing it right. It was about keeping them alive. It doesn't matter. How does it matter? This is not a Broadway play that they should do it to perfection. None of us bought tickets. So they can do what they like. That's how they grow. So there's a whole difference between letting them grow and growing them up. So people used to ask my wife and me, how did you bring up your son like this? He's supposed to be very decent, unlike me. How did you bring up your son? And I would tell them, we did not bring him up. He grew. So as you all know, plants and trees grow towards the sun. So our duty as parents and teachers is to direct our children towards the sun, towards the right things, towards the bright things of life. And they will grow. We don't have to twist and turn them and do grafting in this T into D is not required. They will grow over a period of time. So what's the biggest problem that we are facing these days? Children don't have the power of choice. They don't know what to choose. Be it habits, be it their routines, like you saw the alarm being set for 1 o'clock in the morning. We are doing all this because children have not grown up learning how to do this on their own. So what's the reason? If a child knows that he has to do something tomorrow, he will do it on his own. So most of the time the child doesn't know why he is doing what he is doing. We tell children, do this. How many of us tell them why he should do this? So that takes a lot longer. Trying to make them understand why they should do what they do is a whole lot more laborious than just passing, just doling out a rule that says, you shall do this or I will beat you to pulp. So out of sheer fear, they do it and they have no clue. So one of those children were asking, why should I do this? So the problem is actually a non-existent entity. There's no such thing as a problem. It is the absence of an effort to find a solution that we define as a problem. And I think the management and the teachers of child-centric school have cleared that problem statement for you. There is a solution now. Right in Vellore, a town like Vellore, which I've been here 40 years now. I came to Vellore in 1982. Vidyalayam school in CMC, Krishnaswamy school in Vellore, Ida's Kada. There was nothing else. And all these other new schools that you see, Spring Days and Sunbeam, and all those came much later. So in a place like Vellore, to have a school that addresses the child and not the world, I think you people are really blessed. So to give you a little glimpse into what syllabus driven, so Santosh was saying in his introduction that I've always believed there's no such thing as learning, teaching. Yeah, there's no such thing as teaching. You have to show children how to learn. So education is all about teaching your children how to study. If at all you teach someone something, teach them how to do it. Don't teach them what to do. You give a hungry man a fish, you quell his hunger. You teach him how to fish, you've quelled his hunger for a lifetime. So teach them how to learn. Do not teach them subject. Show them the way to study. How do you study? How do you read? How many lines do you read? What should be your normal reading speed? So many words a minute. How do you assess that you've understood? It's not by writing an answer to a question. An exam is like a lottery ticket. You study 50 questions, you get 49 questions asked in the exam, you get a distinction. You get that one question as an essay question, you're sunk. So exams are a very superficial way of assessing a student's capability. And I always remember what my son's principal used to say. She always said that being the best is not about being better than the rest. It's an absolute value. You are best by sheer virtue of the fact that you are best, not because you are better than somebody else. And most of the world depends on a comparative scale. I have 89 marks, all this percentile calculations is all based on that. So just to give you a glimpse, a short glimpse into what happened in my days as a student. So as I said, I belonged to a family of teachers. So I literally had a school going at home. So my aunt was history, geography and English. Another aunt was physics, chemistry. So tuitions were becoming a culture right in those days. I'm talking about the 80s, late 70s and 80s. So I used to wake up in the morning at 5:30 when this Malayalam teacher would come home. He was a munshi, they call them munshis, they are scholars, Malayalam scholars. He taught me so much Malayalam. I don't think I use even a tenth of that these days. And it did not help me to score a single mark more. He taught me who discovered Malayalam, it did not matter. From those days, so I was literally hounded day in and day out. 10th standard exam, I remember, I cheated. I would keep the textbook open and put an Archie comic inside. and I read the Archie comics only as a form of rebellion. There was only so much I could take. So I read the comics, and unfortunately they did not ask any questions out of the Archie's comics. So I fared very poorly in my 10th standard exam. So that was an eye-opener for me. So I wound myself up. 2 years more I studied. I did extremely well in my pre-university. I got into CMC. And then I let go again. So here's a typical example of exams being a completely useless yardstick for success. I think I'm reasonably successful as a surgeon, or else I wouldn't be standing here. Santosh wouldn't have called me over this evening. As a first year medical student, we had 3 papers to answer, university papers, and I failed all 3. And then I had to redo my 3 papers along with another 2 the next year. And ultimately, because I liked what I was doing as I went along in medical school, I ended up becoming a surgeon, a brain surgeon, and now I love being one. So that's a clear illustration of several things I want to talk about, which is one, forced learning doesn't work. It didn't work with me, and I don't think it works with many of the kids. Some of them do get good marks, but eventually, if luck is on their side, they fit into some kind of a slot and they get along in life. But to be excellent, to be on the cutting edge, you need to have imagination, and forced learning kills imagination. 2 is that marks don't really matter. Exams don't really matter. If someone fails an exam, it doesn't matter. So why ever fail an exam? Why have an exam in the first place? When you can assess your child every day, that's what they're doing. This system of education assesses a child on a day-to-day basis. So the school my son went to used to win all the prizes at competitions, quiz, music, dance, drama. They used to win the prizes. But they never knew they won the prize. After the program was over, they were taken away from the program venue. The prizes were never collected. They were never told they won the prize, because the school believed, and I'm sure JK believed the same, that competition kills imagination. When you compete, you only try to be better than the other fellow. When you do not have competition, your imagination kicks in, then the possibilities are infinite. So, having said that, I think I have made my point reasonably clear, which is, the point I really want to make today is that as parents of children going to this kind of a school, it's going to be a test of your patience. Sometimes you'll wonder, did I make a mistake? I don't see the results of this. My friend's child came first in his secondary school, or whatever it's called, 8th standard. He's got a state rank, and I don't even know what class my son is going to. It doesn't matter. As long as the teachers and the management are doing what they're doing now, as I see they're doing now, your children are in safe hands, simply because you're letting the sun do its work. SUN, I mean. The sun doing its work to make a tree grow is what this system of education does to a child that is growing. So the new system of marketing, business model, etc. is talking about, everybody talks about organic growth. When you advertise, they talk about organic growth versus natural growth. But when it comes to schools, it's all forgotten. There is no organic growth in schools. Children are fertilized, you put manure, you stick things into their throat, beat them to pulp and make them study. Where is the organic growth in a school? This is organic growth. When you let children express themselves, learn on their own, teachers help them to learn, that is organic growth. So let's remember that organic growth needs to come to schools as well. And I've always believed that at the end of a child's journey through a school, the most important lesson a child needs to learn is the power of choice. And the power of choice relates to their career choices. So the chief educational officer was talking about his daughter who he wanted going to IIT, but she chose to go to medical school. I think that's a very wise thing to do, to never decide for your child what he or she does. So I'm the third generation of doctors. My son decided not to be a doctor. We decided not to push him to become a doctor. It would have been extremely easy for me to get him launched into that profession with 3 generations behind me and all the work I have done, very easily done to shoehorn him into the medical system. But no, he did not want it. We don't want it either. We had a neurology professor in CMC. She was our teacher. Brilliant neurologist. Father was an anesthesiologist. Daughter decided to become a dancer. And she was devastated. She studied in Rishi Valley School. She was devastated. And that lady was a bit of a straight-jacketed lady, so she wouldn't talk to the daughter. She ostracized this girl. The younger one decided to go the parents' route. And many years later, I happened to meet my professor and I said, "How's your daughter?" She said, "Well, she's the pride of the family." I said, "What happened now?" She went off to the United States, started a dance school. She flies her own jet plane now. And her other daughter sitting and scratching somebody's sores, she's a dermatologist. So that is the power of choice that schools like this endow on the children. But one last word, and this is for the parents. As a parent, have the patience to wait out this journey. It does not fail. Because as parents, we run out of steam as we get older. The children are just picking up speed. Let them move. And this is the only system which allows children to express themselves, grow organically, and become what they want to be. Thank you.